Mr. Williams, as you look at the possible expenses that could come forward from new legislation from Congress based upon what was voted on yesterday, was defeated in the House on the food safety. Obviously, I think we're all in agreement that food safety is very, very important. No one would deny that. But what added expense would that give, that place upon you as a small grower? What added expenses are you looking at that it would cost you, and what impact will it have to your bottom line?
There's a great deal. Initially, the initial costs are bringing facilities up to standards, and that can be rather expensive, particularly for family-owned farms. Oftentimes, that will be older facilities that may never be capable of being brought up to standard at a reasonable cost. That's the initial cost. I think the bigger cost is the ongoing cost, the administrative cost. The record keeping is enormous. And that is just basically right now to meet some of the standards that have been set in place, that common practice, that particularly that the chain stores are already requiring. This is not a government requirement, but requirement by the customer base. It's very extensive. So you actually look, in many cases, having to employ additional labor just to keep up and to administer the programs. Those are things which are astronomically expensive and could be devastating from my viewpoint to the small farmer.
Mr. Anderson, how about you? I mean, in the wine industry.
Well, we see that in similar ways that it does affect us, and it's a growing concern. Thank you.
Mr. Barnwell, when we're talking about the different markets that the 2008 Farm Bill have expanded, what part has the USDA played in helping you expand those markets?
Well, particularly in Henderson County, one has been into the schools. It's been very, very hard for a long time to get local produce in there. It's made it more accessible. It also it's buying all that those sliced apples that are working very well in the nutrition part for Mr. Henderson, and it also the local farm markets and some things like that. It's supporting. There is a really good market in Asheville. The State Farmers Market's there. We've got the curb market in Hendersonville, a tailgate market. It's actually done in the commissioner's parking lot in Hendersonville. And those are some things that it's specifically done and helped to support for us. And these new, the new money for some of the grants on the export markets is also there. But we hadn't seen that direct effect yet in our area, but we see the direct effect of the nutrition part of the bill.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe Mr. Williams has more detail being a commissioner, but I think Henderson County is number 2 in the state of a state that's second in the country of being diversified in cash crops.
That's correct. Total crop production, it does rank second in the state of North Carolina, and we're quite proud of that.
Absolutely. Maybe Mr. Lukemeyer will ask about tourism. Maybe a really good one to ask. It's a really good. I'll not give it away, but they do a great job in Henderson County, especially with their apples. Mr. Holbrook, talk to me about crop insurance. I know in your testimony you talked about how difficult it has become, the added expense, and what added pressure does that put on your farm? What added pressure it put on you personally, and obviously with loans. Obviously, if there's outstanding loans, they're not necessarily looking at you, but maybe some from your neighbor farmers. How difficult it is they don't have the crop insurance to get the loans, and how that plays an important, vital role within the bottom line, but obviously the financial structure of the company.
The crop insurance, I've took multi-pearl crop insurance every year since I've been farming. In 2004, when Ivan and Francis come through and flooded my fields, I got up one morning, what am I going to do now? Well, I got crop insurance. I didn't get a dime out of it. So that expense, some farmers didn't have the insurance, that couldn't afford to buy it. So the cost kept going up, and eventually last year I just dropped it. I have NAP insurance now, which will just cover very little of it if there is a loss. It's raising tomatoes and pepper are high capital crops. The average price is around $9,900 an acre just to get a crop in and harvest it. And we need some type insurance backup for that much expenditure. It's a very important part of our farm, insurance, but it has to be able to be manageable and workable for us when we do need it in disasters like we had in '04.
Why wasn't it covered under the insurance? I mean, that was a devastation flood. I mean, that was.
Yeah,
I mean, I remember seeing your peppers floating down the river through the middle of Canton.
Yeah, I gave them all to Camp.
Yeah, every single one of them.
And
you guys wouldn't believe it, but I mean, it was peppers everywhere.
it was 8 foot deep in my field. The reason it didn't help me primarily was you have to, I insured for a 65% coverage. In other words, if I harvested over 65% of the crop, then there's no coverage. And on September the 8th when it came, I'd already harvested 70% of the crop. No matter what the price was that I'd done harvested the price of the crop at 70% of it, didn't matter what the price was, but I'd done harvested over the allowable 65% coverage I had. That's the reason it didn't cover it.
At this time, Mr. Hudgens, before I yield to the ranking member, in canned peaches, what is there competitors in the import market in canned peaches? Is there competitors out there from other countries that you're having to compete with? And if you are, then what are some advantages they have that you may not have?
We face significant international competition. Today, the largest player internationally in terms of imported product into this country is China. The advantages there would be very apparent, low labor costs. So when it comes to our ability to compete internationally, we can't touch the Chinese, and no one else can either. Our argument would go back to more of the quality issues, the reliability of the product, the fact that we have a domestically produced product that is available in a timely manner. But when we look at the Chinese today, the Chinese are accounting for more than 70% of the imported product coming into this country today. It's a real challenge.
And that's really a shame. I mean, if you look at it, legislation from Congress, regardless of the administrations, Democrats, Republicans, you look at more added pressures and restraints on our local farmers, which makes it more difficult for them to produce. Obviously, we went from 35,000 acres of producing apples in Henderson County now to 5,500 acres. And it's because of so many, but yet the outside world doesn't have to abide by those same requirements and regulations that we're having to push our farmers to do so. I certainly think if we would require those same requirements and level the playing field, that we would be, when I talked about earlier here, having a net import and export, I think we would be then exporting and have a much stronger exportation of our fruits and vegetables, and allow our backbone of all of our communities in the rural area, which is our farmers, to be able to support their families. And I mean, I remember 20, 30 years ago, I'm only 37, but all the communities, I mean, when you looked at the people who were on the bank boards, who were, financially very strong in the community, it was all of our farmers. And now our farmers are struggling day in and day out, and we've got to put our farmers back on the top of the economic structure in our community. So that's one of the things that hopefully, I know the ranking member and I, we've had a couple of hearings already based upon trade. And if there's one area that we can really focus on, textiles would be obviously great for North Carolina, but our farmers particularly would be a very good place for us to start and look at leveling that playing field if we're going to have any type of a continuation of small farmers and small ag in our country. So at this time, I'll yield to the ranking member, Mr. Lukemeyer, for his questions.